Now their island home was moving further and further south. As the cold started to bite, plants stopped growing and food became scarce. In the winter months, dinosaurs had to survive freezing temperatures and frequent snow showers. But theirs was not the only world undergoing change. The Earth was entering a new geological time period called the Cretaceous. 120 million years ago, the southern coast of Australia was firmly attached to Antarctica and only 700 miles away from the South Pole. Today, this same coastline is 3,600 miles away. Close to the Australian city of Melbourne is the small seaside town of Inverloch. In the summer, families flock here to warm themselves on its sunny beaches. In winter, it's cold and frosty. But when the sun is shining, temperatures rarely fall below 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Today, it's shirt sleeves for fossil hunters from Monash University in Melbourne who are digging up the bones of dinosaurs that once lived here. Less than 100 yards from where the dinosaurs died, Tom Rich of the Museum of Victoria has uncovered evidence that during the Cretaceous, the climate was a far cry from what it is now.
What we have here is a situation unique in the world at the time dinosaurs lived. We have evidence in this outcrop of seasonally frozen ground. The whole profile would have been frozen during the winter.
In summer, the ground thawed out and the heavier clay soil oozed into the softer sand below. Eventually, the clay couldn't sink any further and flattened out. Beneath it, the ground was permanently frozen, a layer of rock commonly known as permafrost.
What does this mean for the dinosaurs? It means that this area was very, very cold, a very difficult place to survive.
During the Cretaceous, this coastline lay well within the Antarctic Circle, where summer days were 20 hours long and winter days extremely short. As winter closes in on the dinosaurs, the sun slips below the horizon. At the end of the Earth, darkness descends for 4 months. Without sunlight, their world becomes even colder.
What kind of dinosaurs could live in that cool, damp environment? We didn't know. Now we know what lived there. And the big surprise, the bizarre thing is, they're not bizarre.
850 miles north of Inverloch, in the hostile outback of Australia, proof has emerged that somehow dinosaurs did cope with the cold. In 1989, in Roma, central Queensland, scientists discovered Australia's most complete dinosaur to date. Almost all of its bones were recovered. It's so well preserved, even impressions of its skin are visible. This is Minmi, a medium-sized plant eater with a relatively large head and armor plating designed for protection from predators. The armor not only covered Minmi's back, but ran all the way under her belly. Armor-plated dinosaurs usually ranged in size from 15 to 30 feet. Minmi was only 9 feet long and had unusually long legs. Her long legs suggest she was active, could move fast. Her smaller size helped her conserve energy. By generating her own heat, Minmi was able to survive the cold. It's clear that Minmi's size was the key to its survival in these harsh conditions. Today, many creatures that live at the poles adapt to the cold by scaling down in size. The Arctic hare and fox are up to 20% smaller than their counterparts in warmer climates.
In general, larger animals require larger amounts of food and travel longer distances to find it. So when there's less food, there's less room to move, scaling down makes every sense in the world.
Becoming smaller may be the most efficient way to combat the cold, but it's not the only one. The discovery of another dinosaur in the outback would shake up the theory of scaling down and ignite a primeval mystery. This is the Langdon homestead. Owner Doug Langdon has farmed this land for over 40 years. Cattle stations like this are scattered across 2 million square miles of plains, scrub, salt lakes, and worn-down mountain ranges, otherwise known as Australia's outback. Langdon's 10,000 acres are located near the town of Muttaburra in the heart of central Queensland. Each day he crisscrosses the land checking up on his livestock. One day in 1963 started out much like this, but would end like no other.
Yeah, well, it started off just like any other old day. Was heading down, mustering down on the river for some wandering cattle. I rode onto this rocky outcrop, and after I rode past it, I looked down and I noticed something in the rock, something unusual.
At first he thought it was the bones of a dead cow, but on closer inspection, he reconsidered.
I could see what I reckon parts of the backbone of whatever animal it was. I didn't know what it was at the time, of course. But it was too uniform and big to be a bullock or something like that. So I put a couple of bits in my saddlebag and brought them home, and I sent them down to the museum to be identified.
The Queensland Museum in Brisbane announced that Doug had found not only a nearly complete dinosaur, but a totally new species.
To think that I had found a dinosaur that was unique to Australia and unique to the world, and to think that they were going to call us after my old hometown of Muttaburra and after myself, Muttaburrasaurus langdoni. And that was a great honour and a great thrill.
Muttaburrasaurus was 32 feet long and 16 feet tall, the largest dinosaur ever found in Australia. A plant eater, it had a long dagger-like spike on its thumbs for defending itself against predators. Muttaburrasaurus walked on all fours but could rear up on its hind legs to forage in the trees. Teeth specially designed for shearing were set into its jaw. Its skull had a hollow chamber on top of its snout, suggesting the ability to communicate. This is how it may have sounded. 120 million years ago, a distant rumble breaks the early morning stillness. A slow-moving herd of Muttaburrasaurus is on the move in search of food. The hollow chamber amplifies their bellows, warning the herd of any impending danger. A grazer, Muttaburrasaurus was an eating machine. At 4.5 tons, it had to consume at least half a ton of food a day to survive. Feeding a herd of them in the dead of winter would take a miracle.
You still had 24 hours of darkness in the middle of winter. And that means the plants, which were all deciduous, drop their leaves or go into a dormancy stage. And that means there's not much food available for the plant-eating dinosaurs.
Little or no food, how about a Barosaurus survived at the bottom of the world, remained an enigma. But a shock discovery 4,500 miles away may finally solve the mystery. This is Merimbio Base, Antarctica. Here, the average temperature is 30 degrees Fahrenheit, but can drop to -60 without warning. Winds can reach speeds of up to 70 miles an hour. This scientific survey station belongs to Argentina and is located 2,200 miles south of Buenos Aires, on Seymour Island in the Antarctic Peninsula. In 1998, the Argentinian Air Force brought a joint team of Argentinian and American dinosaur hunters to this remote part of the world. From Merimbio, they traveled 40 miles across iceberg-strewn waters to Vega Island, where they set up camp. With less ice than elsewhere in the Antarctic Peninsula, it's the most accessible part of the continent. But ice was non-existent here during the Cretaceous, 120 million years ago. Vega Island was covered in a forest of conifers, pines, and ferns. Deep carpets of shade-loving mosses and plants grew on the forest floor. But even in the middle of summer, the angle of the sun was so low, the struggle for light was intense. Trees leaned towards the sun's rays, like houseplants do on a windowsill. Dinosaurs once lived here. But now the polar forests are gone, submerged under a sea of frozen water. All semblance of Antarctica's prehistoric world vanished 3 million years ago, when the temperature dropped a paralyzing 10 degrees Fahrenheit and an ice cap 10,000 feet thick slowly engulfed the poles. Since then, several ice ages have come and gone, and glaciers advanced and retreated. But the ice never leaves Antarctica, except on the peninsula. As the last remnants of winter melt in the summer's sun, the team on Vega Island sets out in search of ancient creatures from a world gone by.
The most intriguing thing about looking for dinosaurs in Antarctica is the fact that as long as you can put up with the climate, it's like almost like going to another planet. Every site we stop at is probably a new site that nobody's looked at before.
A 2-hour hike from base camp, the team uncovered the bones of a plesiosaur sticking out of the ground. It's not a dinosaur, but a close relative that lived in the sea during the early Cretaceous. A candidate for the Loch Ness Monster, it was a reptile that fed on fish. For Sergio Morenci of the Antarctic Institute of Argentina, the discovery is a clear sign they won't find any dinosaurs here.
The plesiosaur we just found here tell us that this place was the bottom of a warm sea.
Even here, warm seas had warm shores. Sergio now thinks he knows where to look for dinosaurs.
If we are going to